Welcome to Ladies of Another View, and I'm on today with Lori and Emily, and I'm Patty. Later in the show, we're going to really be talking a lot about what happened over the weekend with Trump and the assassination attempt, but we are still going to have our lighter side, and you're going to meet a Newfoundland dog and his best friend, which is a mallard duck. And I'm going to introduce you to my new puppy, too, so I got a little clip from that. But first, I want to introduce Craig Deleuze. He is with Project 21. And he also has been involved in the media for quite a few years. He's the founder of Uncommon Sense Media Group. I like that title. Welcome to the show, Craig.
It's a pleasure to be here with you.
We had one thing planned, but being the news is ever changing, we're going to really talk a lot about what happened with Trump. But I want to begin with an article you wrote recently with Project 21. Today's college students are being educated into imbecility. And the reason I wanted to hang on to this article, because I think it has a lot to do with the world we're in, politics, and how you can tell people don't believe your lying eyes and people aren't thinking for themselves. So let's start by talking about what's in that article.
So the premise of the article, and by the way, I think you hit the nail on the head when we're talking about where a lot of the issues and the challenges we're dealing with today are coming from. And it's coming from the fact that in many cases our systems of higher education were once the envy of the entire world. Everyone from across the world looked at our colleges and our community colleges, our community college system, both private and public, as the place to send their young people in order to learn important things. And what we're finding now is that these very same educational systems have gone from becoming institutions of education to institutions of indoctrination, specifically cultural neo-Marxist indoctrination. You go to many of these schools, you go to many of the classes that are in these schools, and the sorts of things that are being taught. It's no longer about understanding our free market economy. It's no longer about engineering, math, literature, understanding the great works of literature. It's about understanding the context of oppressor versus oppressed, understanding how to identify what area of victimization you fall in, and then how to identify what level of or what area of oppressor status whoever is in power might fall into. And what it's doing is creating a generation of young people who, number one, are ill prepared for the world in which they have to go out and compete and make a living and provide for themselves. But additionally, it's creating a generation of young people who, because they do not truly understand the nature of who we are as a country and how our country works and how we got to be where we are, it's creating a generation that actually hates this country. And at the same time is now working against their own interest and the interests of the United States of America.
Well, I think you make a good point. I'm thinking, as you're talking about when these kids get out of college and then they go into the workforce, the people that are there have done their due diligence, they've worked their way up the ladder, but then these kids come in and they are entitled and think they deserve more than they should be because they haven't proven themselves. So what kind of work environments are we going to get? And especially if you get into a company that is more worried about their ESG scores.
As you're getting these companies, what you're starting to find now is they're getting away from that, because what they're finding is they're not turning profits. They're finding that time and time again, they're becoming less productive. They are finding that even though their goal is to create more diversity, they're creating less diversity. Even though they want more unity, they're creating more division, because that's what a lot of this stuff does. And you know, I'll tell you this, I am a believer that diversity can be a strength. True diversity, true cultural understanding and diversity and intellectual diversity. What they want is they want this surface level diversity, number one. In other words, they just want it to look diverse, not necessarily be diverse. But the other issue is that it's diversity above all others. In other words, it's one thing if I'm looking at two candidates who are of equal ability and equal skill, and I want to add someone who brings a different perspective, as opposed to I am going to choose the candidate that is going to bring me quote unquote diversity, or at least the image of diversity that I'm looking for. They're finding that many of these companies are finding that it's in the end, it is harming their bottom line. So you're starting to see diversity, equity, and inclusion start to take a back seat to productivity and profits.
You know, it's so hard too as a young individual. It's oftentimes just like kind of a dark cloud over your future. You don't know what to expect. So maybe in your research and stuff like that, have you come across something that could be done or helpful to these students to kind of get rid of this? Is there any hope kind of thing?
Well, and there is, and one of the things that you're starting to see is, and coming from more conservative men, you're starting to see some of these some of these DEI trainers and programs are actually starting to do it the way in which I always thought it should have been done, which is basically helping people understand that people see the world differently. People come at the world differently. Not everybody's American experience is the same. It's all the American experience, but when you understand that, it helps you to be able to relate to someone better. The other thing that a lot of these programs are doing now is helping people to understand that, you know, when you talk about the term implicit bias, the whole point is, well, if you're part of the system, you're automatically biased against that person because of their race. Well, the truth is, we all prejudge. We see someone based on how they're dressed, based on how they talk, based on, you know, a bunch of various different things. And we make a prejudgment. The key is to make sure that that prejudgment doesn't affect or impact how we treat that person, or is not the sole determiner of how we work with that person. And I think that when we all understand that, and it's, by the way, something that everybody does, then I think it's something, or at least can be prone to, then I think it's something that we can then work and address. But what their thing is, well, implicit bias means, well, okay, well, if you're white, you're racist. If you're black, there's no way you can be racist. And you're, by the way, you also happen to be a victim. That's what they refer to as implicit bias. And I think the number one thing is to look for those new trainers, the new people who are coming out, because companies really do want to address this. And the terms in and of themselves, diversity and inclusion in particular, are not bad. It's the way in which they've decided to implement these programs. They've taken these very nice words and then put them onto a very bad or evil program.
You know, 100%. I like what you're saying, because in college I took some social psychology classes, and it's really interesting how first impressions can often affect how you ultimately perceive that person. But if you look at it in a positive way, not a victimization, but let's look at this as a way to teamwork, then it can be positive. When we come back, we're going to talk about what happened over the weekend with the assassination attempt, so don't go away.